Hey everyone, Forrest here with Rocky Mountain School of Photography, and today we are going to talk about cameras and the best cameras to buy this holiday season. I'm going to start with some general purpose notes overarching on how to make good camera decisions, and then I'm going to give you my best $500, $1,000, and $2,000 camera pick for this holiday season. Let's dive in. So the first thing that I want to address is when you should get a camera instead of a cell phone. And honestly, if you're trying to become a photographer, that's your goal, say you're a beginner and you want to start bringing in some income from your photography, I think that right away would warrant a camera. Cameras are going to give you better ergonomics, they're going to give you better controls, they're going to give you better high ISO or low light performance, you're going to get better lens selection, and file management is just easier on a camera. You have a memory card, you can work with that, it's just simple. So if you want to be a photographer, I would go out and actually buy a real camera. However, if you're just looking to pick up something to shoot photos of friends, family, vacation photos, things like that, honestly, the best choice for many people who are not trying to become a photographer, whatever that means, is just going to be your phone. Secondly, I want to address where to purchase things. There are a ton of, I would call them fly-by-night camera stores out there in the world. My favorite, the school's favorite, is B&H Photo in New York City. They're amazing. If you're looking for used equipment, KEH is a great option as well. Their used department is awesome. Long story short, just do your research. If you see a deal on the internet that looks too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. I've found that camera and lens pricing, particularly in the new market, is fairly controlled. And if you find an outlier offering a price that's vastly different from every other retailer, it's probably not actually as good of a deal as you might think. Third thing I want to address is brands that I would consider. Now, this is an important one because there's a lot of brands out there and a lot of them don't have as much of a system that you are buying into. My personal 4 favorite brands at the moment are Canon, Sony, Nikon, and Fuji. Are there other brands? Absolutely. Are there other brands that make great cameras? Absolutely. But again, if you're trying to buy a camera to eventually become a photographer, even a professional photographer, you're going to want to pick a brand that has the support and the system behind it to allow you to grow in that world. Especially as photographers, we're going to start buying lenses for our cameras and accessories and things like that, and it's nice if we can use those through multiple camera generations and into the future. The next thing that I want to mention is the difference between mirrorless and DSLR. A few years ago, mirrorless was an emerging technology. Now mirrorless has taken the front stage and they are the dominant technology in the photo space. If you are picking up a new camera, I would 100% pick up a mirrorless camera, as you're going to be buying into a system of lenses and cameras that are future-proof. There's a lot of great DSLR deals right now. I would kind of steer clear from them because the lenses and the cameras are going to use a different lens mount than what mirrorless uses. Doesn't mean we can't adapt it, but mirrorless really is the future. We might as well buy into that now. Finally, before we get into the specific recommendations, I do want to say that you should consider your lens options carefully. I recommend most beginners start with a kit lens, which is usually a normal zoom lens in the 18 to 55 or 24 to 70 millimeter range. A normal lens for photographers means that the lens zooms about similarly to what our eyes can see. Our eyes are about 50 millimeters, 48 millimeters, something like that. So normal lenses usually encompass the field of view that our eyes have. However, do consider your second or third lens based on what genre of photography you want to get into. If you're really keen on shooting wildlife, your next lens should be a long lens, like a 100 to 300 or a 70 to 300, something like that. If you want to do landscape, you're going to want to go wide. If you're going to do portrait, you're going to want to get like a longer-ish lens that has a very shallow depth of field, something like an 85 f1.8 or a 50 f1.4, something in that range. And with that, let's get into my recommendations. So my sub $500 recommendation is going to be the Canon EOS R100 with the 18 to 45 millimeter lens. B&H actually has this on sale right now for $499, and you get an additional $50 off when you add it to your cart. So $450 for a camera and a lens. Now, one thing to be aware of is this is very much an entry-level camera. So if you look at the spec sheet, I like to look at specs, you are going to be limited in some ways. Namely, continuous shooting performance. If you're hoping to use a camera like this for wildlife or sports photography, it only can shoot 6.5 frames per second. That means if you hold down the button, 6.5 frames will happen every second. That's actually a respectable number. However, the buffer will only allow you to shoot 6 frames before the camera has to start to write to the memory card. So it's going to be limiting for sports or wildlife or fast action photography. Additionally, getting into video, it is capable of shooting 4K 24 FPS video, not 4K 30. However, there is a heavy 1.6x crop that happens. And that means if you are hoping to use a camera like this for video, you're going to run into not being able to get as wide of a field of view as you want. So if you're hoping to use this for something like landscape video or real estate or something like that, you are going to be limited in that 4K option. With that said, this does shoot full HD at 60 frames per second, and there's no crop applied to that. So fairly respectable for a camera, and again, at the $400 price point, this is pretty great. I also do want to point out that they sell a combo with an 18-45 and a 55-210, so this as well gets you that longer reach. However, longer reaches are usually useful for sports and wildlife, and that continuous shooting performance is going to be a bit of a bummer here. With all that said, this camera is going to kick the absolute butt of a smartphone in most situations. So with a little bit of editing in Lightroom, shooting raw, understanding the camera, this is a great pick for a beginner, and especially at that $450 price point with a lens, it's pretty hard to beat. Going up one level from here, we have the Canon EOS R10. So this is a couple steps up from the R100, and it's still crop sensor. I would still consider it an amateur level camera. However, again, we're at $1,000 with an 18-45mm lens. The big difference here is when we get into those specs, now we actually have some respectable video shooting modes and photo shooting. In the photo shooting mode, we can all of a sudden go up to a frame buffer of about 30 frames with the mechanical shutter. That's pretty awesome. And that's at 15 frames per second, which is really respectable for a wildlife or sports or action shooter. Moving into video, we also have 4K 60 now, as well as 10-bit color. So those of you who shoot video, 10-bit color means that you have more color depth and you're able to grade your footage, color your footage a little bit more aggressively than you would be with an 8-bit piece of footage. Additionally, ergonomics-wise, a camera like this adds a few more buttons, a few more dials, a few more menu options that just give you more choices. Really, this would be kind of a camera that would be suitable for someone who even wants to maybe start making some money and generating some income with their photography, and they want something that they can work with for a couple years. Again, I probably wouldn't go out and shoot a wedding with a camera like this. You could, but I probably wouldn't recommend it because it's missing some of those kind of key features that you'd want in that kind of a situation, like dual card slots or a full frame sensor. But again, to get started with a career in photography, making money in photography, this is an excellent pick as well. Finally, I want to move into my $1,500 to $2,000 price point cameras. And I actually have 3 recommendations here, because if you're spending this much on a camera, you should really do your own research and kind of figure out what works best for you. In the $1,500 to $2,000 price point, we're limiting ourselves to very high-end crop sensor cameras and very low-end full-frame cameras. So you can almost make a choice. You can have like a top-tier crop camera or a little bit more of an entry-level full-frame camera. Now, what do I mean by crop and full-frame? Full-frame sensors, very simply, are larger. It means that the sensor, the image-making bits in the back of the camera are bigger than a crop sensor. And this does a few things. It makes your lenses appear a little bit wider on a full-frame camera. Also, sometimes you can't use crop sensor lenses on a full-frame camera, so do your research there. If you try to maybe start on a crop camera and you move to a full frame later, your lenses might not work without some heavy vignetting or adapters, things like that. But the big difference between a full frame and a crop camera, and again, I'm making lots of simplifications here. So if you're watching this video and you're like a pro tier photographer and you know all the answers, I get it, right? I'm gonna make some simplifications here. But in general, a full frame camera will yield higher image quality as well as a shallower depth of field at the same focal length, the same apparent focal length. So what that means is if you're going to be a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer and you want those really shallow depth of field backgrounds, the blurry backgrounds, a full frame camera is going to allow you to get those a little bit easier than you can with a crop camera. And that's why I said that the R10 is good, but if you're really trying to get into that portrait, wedding, shallow depth of field world, getting a full frame camera would be better. So in the full frame camera world, I have 2 recommendations. The first is going to be the Canon EOS R8 with the 24 to 50 millimeter lens. The lens is nothing to write home about here, but the R8 itself is one of my favorite cameras from Canon. The reason is body only. This camera is only $1,300 right now, which is an insanely low price point for a full frame camera. So if you wanna, again, do portraiture or weddings or things that need shallow depth of field and you want that full frame camera, this is a great place to go. Now do be aware that in order to pack full frame into a $1,300 body, there are some shortcuts that are made. So definitely spend some time in the spec sheet making sure that this camera is suitable for what you want to shoot. I can tell you though that it's one of my favorite cameras Canon makes because the price point and the performance is a really good matchup. Do check out the video up there in the corner that I created on a setup guide for the R8. We walk through the whole menu options and how to set this thing up for the best results. Another camera in that same price point that I also want to draw attention to that has a very good holiday savings right now, the Sony a7 III with the 28 to 70 millimeter lens. This actually is $500 off right now from B&H for only $1,700, and the a7 III is actually a pro tier camera. It's just a little bit older. So you're actually getting kind of a tier above an R8 as far as controls and weatherproofing and just general camera quality, but the a7 III is a few years old, so you're getting a little bit of an older model, but more performance back when this camera was first announced. So if you're not somebody who needs the newest, latest, greatest thing, this can be a fantastic pick for those of you who want a really solid camera at a super solid price. I'll also point out that body only, if we don't get a lens, it's only $1,500 with that same $500 savings, and then you can pick a lens that suits your genre of photography. Finally, if you do want a top tier crop sensor camera, like professional crop sensor camera, I would definitely check out the Fujifilm XT-5 with the 18 to 55 millimeter lens. It doesn't have an amazing deal right now, but it itself is an amazing camera. It's 40 megapixels, it's only $2,100 with an 18 to 55 lens, and it is a top tier crop sensor camera. Now, why would you want a crop sensor camera? Well, if you don't care about shallow depth of field as much and you really just want a small camera, great for travel photography, street photography, things like that. You like the classic styling and ergonomics. The XT-5 is pretty awesome. It's 40 megapixels, great image quality, does a really, really great job. All right, everybody, those are my holiday picks. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely drop a comment down below if you have any questions or special use cases you want to ask me about. I'm happy to make camera recommendations as time allows, so let me know down there. Definitely hit subscribe to stay up to date with future videos. We are putting out videos every single week on photography, videography, all things photo and video. So I'd love to have you along. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.